So glad to be able to do this. First of all, is there anyone here that is a direct relative of anyone that we have in the memorial? Because we've had that in the past, and it's been such a privilege to be able to have folks show up that are nephews and grandnephews and things like that. With those that have served at any point in our nation's services, please stand and be recognized. So great, appreciate it. This is really important to me. After I left the Navy, I was a superintendent of a school system up in Los Angeles, K-12 school system. And I took the students every year to the Smithsonian, as you do. And one of the girls came up to me, 17, 16-year-old, and I was walking around looking at different exhibits. And she said, Mr. Suttie, why did you bring us here? Why do we come to a museum that glorifies war? And it's for that misunderstanding, and significant misunderstanding, that I enjoy and am privileged and am honored to be here so that we can remember the cost of war, which has brought us peace, prosperity, freedom. And that's, of course, why we have places like that. I Googled Memorial Day, and we all know this, and it's not anything that's necessarily cynical, it's just life. And it's actually the best part of life that if you Google Memorial Day this morning, you're going to get travel advisories, you're going to get traffic, you're going to get the cost of gas, you're going to get, there's one article that talks about the cost of the Memorial Day barbecue each year as it goes up and up and up with inflation. And what you don't see for 7 pages, I went 7 pages before I found a Google article that referenced the actual reason for the weekend. And again, it's not necessarily cynical. It's actually maybe what we fought for in some ways. But we as a nation do take this minute and this moment and this weekend, and whether it's Monday or yet tomorrow or today, and we remember the cost of war. And I'm so appreciative of the foundation for this memorial itself. Quick note, it's been 18 years since I took this uniform off, and I may get short of breath. Okay, so if I start to faint and struggle, the belt on under here is a web belt. It's a military service belt. It needed to be. I would not have made it with a leather belt or any other fabric, I don't think. So if I start to get a little bit, start to turn a little sheepish, someone come up and help, because it could happen. The Vietnam War ended officially while I was in high school here, and I had history in that class, I had Latin in that classroom, etc. And it ended while I was in high school, and I had no interest and like most, and no plans whatsoever to be a part of our nation's armed forces. If not for the scholarship that I was offered, surprisingly, as a senior here at San Dieguito, I'm sure I would not have done that. So my reason wasn't patriotic, or it was money. I needed money to go to college, and that's what they offered me. And by the time I was a senior, though, I knew I wanted to fly, and I wanted to be a part of what I was learning about. And so that scholarship came in handy. One of my other classmates of 75 went on to the Naval Academy. I was ROTC and went up the street to USC and stayed fairly local. But I can still name the majority of the teachers that I had here, and the significant ones. There were three that I went to for letters of recommendation for my scholarship, and the interest, the passion, the support, the nurturing, and certainly the education that they gave me were instrumental. And here we are nearly 50 years later. As of next year, we're having our 50th Alumni Association. And I'm looking forward to that. So it's quite a legacy that this school has provided, not just throughout the eras and the ages of the war years and the subsequent war years, but even more than that. I remember as an ROTC midshipman, I went up to San Francisco, California on leave, but we had to wear our uniforms in 1976. And me and 6 other midshipmen were stationed on a ship at Concord Naval Weapons Station just outside the city. We took the BART in, and we were really proud. Feeling a little Tom Cruisey there in my starched white uniform, looking good, looking sharp, and going out on the town in San Francisco, which of course traditionally was a great Navy town. And in 1976, we were verbally abused the entire time we walked the streets, yelled at, profane, spit on, and they blew smoke in our face. And I was wondering what did I get myself involved in 1976. And it is such a great thing to see over the decades. It changed in the 80s very rapidly, but through the decades, it's so wonderful that our nation does respect the service, the sacrifice on families and service members themselves who do sign up and who do fight when necessary. If you ever have the opportunity to fly into Reagan National and you're flying in from the north, sit on the right side. If you know that's going to happen at all, sit on the right side of the airplane and you'll look down out of your window and you'll see more than 400,000 gleaming white headstones, row by row, laced at Arlington National Cemetery. And they're very visible as you come in on that approach. Their silent eloquence tells us what we usually forget to remember: the price paid for what we have. From Flanders Field to the Philippines, the globe is girded with U.S. military cemeteries. I've been fortunate to visit many of them all across the globe. Another experience that just shocked me, we went on a summer of visiting cemeteries and battlefields through Europe in the late 90s, and we came upon Luxembourg, and there's an American cemetery. Again, if you ever have the opportunity, I know Normandy, I know Flanders, I know their destinations, and deservedly so, but and many of the battlefields in Britain. But this cemetery in Luxembourg, beautiful, gorgeous American soil cemetery, and you go in, and the curator met us. It was a rainy day. We were the only people there, and he offered to, with umbrellas, he offered to tour us through this cemetery. And we walk up, and the entire army, the third army of the U.S. Army is buried at Luxembourg from the World War II. When I say the entire army, it is one whole entire hillside. Everyone who served in the Third Army who were killed, and there's more than 5,000 markers there for the Third Army, were killed in the Battle of the Bulge. And even if you survived and went home and 3 decades later passed away, in your will, if you served in that army, you had instructions to take you to Luxembourg. And when we were there, a service member and his family were there interning us in 1998, which was incredible to witness, very solemnly and very quiet. Well, that is George Patton's army, and the general is buried there, and he is the single headstone at the top of the hill, and his headstone is turned and faces his army. Pretty remarkable. Today there are hundreds of Navy vessels and other forces underway and overseas across the oceans today as we sit here this morning in 22 of 24 time zones, often close to being right now in harm's way, sadly, today. That represents what author Mark Halpin, I love this phrase, calls the eternal presence of the battle. Author Rick Atkinson writes, "Each death is as unique as a snowflake or a fingerprint. The most critical lesson for every American is to understand viscerally that this vast host died one by one, and to understand it in your bones that they died for you, they died for our nation, and they died for freedom. Remember this, and also that they are mostly very young military men and women. They are today in peril on the sea, under it, and elsewhere. The average age of the 20 service members, family members, and classmates on this memorial is 21. So we do take a few minutes to share our collective thoughts and prayers and remember all those who have given all while defending our freedoms, preserving our way of life, whether or not they got a ticker tape parade down Fifth Avenue or not. I myself in command had 3 naval aviators killed in the line of duty, and significantly paused to remember their service, their family sacrifice. Let me just thank you again for your dedication in this act of remembrance here, solemnly reaffirming year to year our national commitment and faith. And you know, to act with faith is to act greatly. Faith is both the cause and in one another the reason that we stand shoulder to shoulder in a war zone. It's duty, honor, commitment. It's something that's beyond yourself. In fact, in the military, we call our service selfless service. America is like no other nation before it, and we need to remember this in a day where we are castigated by other nations around the world very freely and often. We're made of a people who cherish the freedoms that were paid for by the blood of those who came before us, served with us today. Winston Churchill once said, "The United States is like a gigantic boiler. Once the fire is lit under it, there is no limit to the power it can generate." When he heard that the Japanese attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor, Churchill, who was willing to lead lonely Britain in the fight against the Nazis, even though victory was very uncertain, famously said that night that he slept the sleep of the saved, because now he knew that victory was certain, because America had been wronged, and he knew the American character. Well, he was speaking of the character of those that graduated from this school many, many years ago and served our country. Our enemies don't understand this character, and they misunderstand it, and they underestimate it. They underestimate the fact that we're going to give up what we have, even our surfboards, and sign up. Second Lieutenant Cousins, Richard Cousins, was one such man. Graduated here, went on to fly in World War II, served amongst those that we call the greatest generation. His nephew, who was also a graduate of the class of '67, is Tom Cousins, and he, of the 4 uncles that Tom had, 2 were lost in World War II. Private First Class David Pepin, Marine Corps. According to a post on the Vietnam Memorial Legacy page, one naval officer wrote this about him: "You raised your right hand at Indoctrination Day at the Naval Academy in 1965, and you joined that class, which was the class of 69, 65, and then 69. Within 3 months, you contracted double pneumonia and regrettably were unable to keep up, and you had a medical discharge from the Naval Academy. You left quietly with no option. But we learned that you felt compelled to serve your country again. Once fully well, you enlisted in the Marines. Well, your Naval Academy class of 1969 now knows, after half a century, that you gave your last full measure in Vietnam. Sir, you have a hero's welcome and a memory we give you now. Your selfless sacrifice for our country is not lost to your classmates of 1969. Character, honor, courage, commitment, faith, duty." San Dieguito, the last person I'll highlight, because I know we're going to remember each of them here today. But San Dieguito graduate Lieutenant J.G. Mike Zerb. Mike was in a helicopter that crashed in the South China Sea in 1966 during the Vietnam War. His remains were never found. His name today is inscribed on the courts of the missing at the Honolulu Memorial, which I have visited. I have a certain affinity for Mike's legacy. The helicopter squadron he was serving in when he was killed was Helicopter Combat Support Squadron 1. HC-1 was the first tour of duty that I ever had, active duty in the military, here at Naval Air Station North Island in San Diego. That squadron's name is HC-1, Pacific Fleet Angels. So these are just a few of the names and the memories and the legacies that we have here today that we're pausing on this 3-day holiday weekend of barbecues and travel to remember. One way I like to look at them, particularly as I became an educator, one final sentiment I'd like to share with you is that we had some pretty good teachers here at San Dieguito, but consider that these comrades, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, once our students, once our classmates here at San Dieguito, have now become our teachers. Their remembered presence here tonight, their words, their deeds of their lives remind us of the human excellence, of the things for which we stand, of the courage that is necessary to maintain these things. They taught us what it means to be a citizen of this nation, the last best hope of Earth. So as I close today, I just, again, am so grateful for you here today and others who couldn't be here or maybe wanted to be. I invited classmates who had other plans that were pre-existed their knowledge of the event, and they plan to come in future years. So I love your faith, your commitment, your dedication, your discipline to simply come out on a Saturday morning and do this and remember these service members who were once our classmates, and now we remember them in this solemn time, and we also remember their families who paid the price just as much. Thank you, and God bless America.